I'm 83 years old, and I have been thinking about one idea for the past few winters. Your life follows the image you have of yourself. It does not argue with you. It does not correct you. It simply obeys. When you are young, that sounds harmless. When you are old, it sounds final. I was not a dramatic man. I did not ruin my life with addiction. I did not lose everything in a single mistake. That would have been easier to understand. No, I lived carefully, steadily, respectably. And that is exactly how I limited myself. When I was in my 20s, I had energy, I had ideas, I had opinions I rarely voiced. But very early on, I decided something about myself. I decided I was not exceptional, not leadership material, not the kind of man people follow. I never announced that decision. I just accepted it, like you accept your height or the color of your eyes. It became part of me, and then I built my life around it. At 27, I was working in a small financial office. Quiet place, fluorescent lights, metal desks, coffee that tasted the same every morning. I was good at my job, careful with numbers, reliable, never late. One afternoon, my manager called me in. He said, "We're expanding. I need someone to supervise the new team." I felt something move inside me. Excitement, fear, possibility. He looked at me and said, "You could do this." And almost automatically, I replied, "I'm not really management material." He didn't argue. He just nodded. A week later, someone else got the position. I told myself I was relieved, less pressure, less responsibility. But that night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling longer than usual. Not because I lost the opportunity, but because I never truly considered I could take it. I dismissed myself before life had the chance to. That pattern repeated quietly for decades. I believed I was the steady one, the dependable one, the background support. So I stayed there. When colleagues debated ideas in meetings, I kept mine short. When others negotiated raises, I accepted what was offered. When someone said, "You should start your own firm," I laughed. "Not me," I would say, and the world listened. The strange thing is this: life rarely pushes back. If you say you are small, it will give you a small stage. If you say you are limited, it will give you limited tests. It does not force you to expand. It allows you to remain exactly as you define yourself. I married at 30. She was brighter than I was, more expressive, more alive in conversations. She believed in growth. I believed in stability. At first, that balance worked. She would suggest things, trips, dinners with friends, taking classes together. I often responded with hesitation. "That's not really my thing." She would smile and say, "Maybe it could be." But I held firm. I had already decided who I was. I thought consistency was strength. I thought predictability was maturity. I did not see that I was hiding inside a fixed identity. We had 2 children, a boy and a girl. They were curious, full of questions. They would tug at my sleeve and say, "Dad, watch this." Sometimes I did. Sometimes I said, "In a minute." A minute becomes a pattern. A pattern becomes a relationship. I told myself I was not the playful father. I was the provider, the quiet anchor. I never shouted, never drank too much, never abandoned them. And yet, there are many ways to be absent. You can be physically present and still somewhere else. In your head, in your routines, in your safe image of yourself. When my son was 10, he asked me why I never came to his weekday games. I said, "Work is important." He said, "So am I." Children say things simply. Adults complicate them. I told myself he would understand when he grew up. What I did not understand is that children do grow up, and they stop asking. In my 40s, I had built a reputation. Reliable, consistent, trustworthy. Those words followed me everywhere. They sound honorable. And they are. But they are not complete. I was never described as bold, or inspiring, or deeply connected, and I never expected to be. Because that wasn't who I believed I was. You see how quiet this is? No disasters, no scandals, just a slow narrowing, like a river that chooses one safe channel and never explores the wider banks. My wife once asked me, "Are you happy?" I answered quickly, "Yes, of course." But I had never examined that answer. I confused comfort with fulfillment. I confused safety with depth. I thought avoiding failure was the same as building meaning. Years passed. The children moved out. The house grew quieter. We talked more in the evenings, or at least she tried to. She would revisit old dreams, opening a small bookstore, traveling across the country, hosting gatherings. I would respond with practical concerns: money, timing, energy. Underneath all of it was a quieter truth. I did not see myself as someone who lived expansively. I saw myself as someone who maintained. So I maintained. And slowly, opportunities stopped knocking, not because they disappeared, but because I no longer recognized them. Then came the hospital room. I was 70. She was 68. Illness does not care about plans. It rearranges everything. In those final months, I sat beside her bed and watched monitors blink in soft green light. The air smelled sterile. Time felt different. compressed, precious. One evening, she looked at me and said, "You always stayed smaller than you were." There was no accusation in her voice, only observation. I wanted to argue. I wanted to list all the things I had done. But something in me knew she was right. I had lived beneath my own capacity, not because I lacked talent, but because I lacked permission. Permission from myself. After she passed, I walked back into our house alone. The silence was not peaceful. It was revealing. When you are alone long enough, your memories become louder. I began replaying moments. The promotion declined, the business idea dismissed, the trips postponed, the conversations avoided. I saw the pattern clearly. I had treated my self-image like a fixed fact, not a choice. I had said, "This is just who I am." And life responded, "Very well." In my 70s, I tried small expansions. I joined a community group. At first, I barely spoke. Then one evening, the usual organizer was absent. Someone said, "Would you lead the discussion?" Old instinct rose up. I'm not that kind of person. But this time, I paused. I heard my own sentence, and I chose differently. "I'll try," I said. My voice shook at first, then it steadied. No one laughed. No one rejected me. In fact, a few people thanked me afterward. I walked home that night with a strange mixture of pride and grief. Pride because I had stepped forward. Grief because I had waited so long. Do you know what is heavy in old age? It is not only the body, it is the awareness of unused capacity, the sense that you lived responsibly, but not fully. I speak to my children now as adults. Our conversations are kind, respectful, but there are layers we never built, shared adventures we never had, emotional language we never practiced. You cannot suddenly become expressive at 80 and expect it to feel natural. You can try, and I do, but depth grows over decades, not months. I am not bitter. Let me be clear. I had a good life, stable income, loyal marriage, healthy children. Many people would call it successful, and perhaps it was. But success and expansion are not the same. You can succeed inside a very small box and never question its size. That is what I did. If you had asked me at 50 whether I was satisfied, I would have said yes. If you asked me now whether I settled, I would also say yes. Both can be true. The mind is obedient. It listens carefully to the story you repeat about yourself. If you say, "I am not confident," it will avoid situations that require confidence. If you say, "I am not creative," it will never test your imagination. If you say, "I am just average," it will organize your choices around that expectation. And after 30 or 40 years, the evidence will appear to confirm it. You will say, "See, this is who I am." But you shape that proof, quietly, consistently, patiently. Now, at 83, mornings come slower. My hands ache when I button my shirt. Some of my friends are gone, some are ill. I spend long afternoons in a chair near the window. Light moves across the floor, and I think, not about what I failed at, but about what I never attempted, the conversations I never initiated, the risks I never explored, the parts of myself I never allowed to grow. There is a particular sadness in knowing you were capable of more kindness than you expressed, more courage than you demonstrated, more presence than you offered, and yet you chose restraint because it felt consistent with your identity. If you are younger than I am, which you likely are, I will not tell you to transform overnight. I have no interest in giving instructions. I am only offering perspective from the far end of the road. Be careful with the sentences that begin with, "I'm just." I'm just not the leader type. I'm just not emotional. I'm just not ambitious. Those words seem modest, they feel safe, but they are design statements. You are sketching your future with them. And life is an obedient architect. It will build according to your drawing. I once believed humility meant lowering expectations for myself. Now I see that humility can also mean acknowledging unused strength. I do not have the luxury of redesigning my entire life now. I can only adjust the remaining chapters. I call my son more often. I tell my daughter stories I once kept inside. I volunteer. I speak up when I have something to say. It feels unfamiliar, but it also feels honest. Still, there is an awareness that certain doors closed quietly years ago. Not slammed shut, just closed, because I never walked through them when they were open. Time does not announce its finality. It simply moves forward. And one day you notice there is less ahead than behind. That is where I stand now, looking back. Not with rage, not with drama, just with clarity. Your life follows your self-image. It follows it faithfully. If you see yourself as small, it will shrink around you. If you see yourself as capable, it will test that capacity. And if you never question the image, you may never know how flexible it was. I am 83 years old. I have lived a decent life. But I lived it inside lines I drew too early. If this reflection reaches you in a quiet moment, let it sit there. You do not need to become someone else. Just examine the frame you have placed around yourself. Ask gently whether it is true or simply familiar. I will finish my days with acceptance. That is all I can do now. The house is quiet again tonight. The clock on the wall ticks steadily. And I understand, perhaps too late, that the loudest force in my life was never outside me. It was the quiet picture I carried within, and it shaped everything.